My final two questions are also issues that lead people away from faith, away from Christianity. And it starts with the notion of hell. It seems very, for some folks, they reject Christianity because of this notion that God would torment people in hell for all eternity just because they didn't believe in Jesus. What is the role of hell in your understanding? And then the follow-up question, of course, is what is heaven about?
I want to answer this question by taking a little bit more time, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
This is a question that I deal with again as a chapter in this new book, so another shameless plug. But I reject the more traditional view that once a person dies, they either go to heaven for eternal bliss for eternity or to hell for eternal conscious torment for eternity. I don't think there's really good biblical evidence for that view. And I'm not the only scholar who thinks that. In fact, I think I'm in the majority. So the usual heaven and hell view doesn't have good biblical support. It also just doesn't make sense if God is truly loving. An eternity in conscious torment is a crime, is a punishment, I should say, that doesn't fit the crime of 80 years of sin or whatever it is. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, what some people do is they'll swing from that view into what's sometimes called universalism. I've just been reading, there's some good books out here on this idea, and there's various forms of universalism. But one form, and here I'll quote or use the reference to David Bentley Hart, because he's just had a big book on this, and I've just finished reading it. One view of universalism, I think, undermines free will. That is, it says in one way or another, and there's various different versions, that God sends everybody to heaven because God ultimately, through one means or another, controls people and sends them to heaven, even if they don't want to. And again, there's some, David Bentley Hart's got a sophisticated approach to this. I don't buy it, but it's not just, not some sort of random throwing things against the wall. But the problem with universalism understood that way is that it seems like our lives don't really count. They don't really matter. Like, why in the world should I self-sacrifice because of climate change if I know that I and everybody else is going to spend eternity with God no matter what I do? So it rubs people the wrong way in terms of, like, what are the consequences for sin? Is it just the case we feel those consequences now? If that's the case, we just got to endure for 80 years and, then we go to a better life, or what's going on there? So that's the second option. I reject what I'll call classical universalism. Third option, this one's more popular amongst evangelicals who don't like the heaven and hell view. They believe this third option, we'll call them annihilationists. They believe that some people go to heaven for eternity and God wipes out, burns up, annihilates all the others. God either does this actively in a flashing display of omnipotence, Adam, you're not one of the ones that go to heaven, so I'll burn you up. Or God does it passively by simply not resurrecting you. You died, God just leaves you in the grave. The problem I have with this view is, even though it has the advantage of not sending people to hell for eternity, which is thumbs up on that, but the problem with this view is that it seems like God gives up. It seems like the Apostle Paul, again, in 1 Corinthians, is not correct when he says, love never fails, love always hopes. This seems like a view of a God who could sustain people and then somehow maybe persuade them later, but just says, you know what, I just give up on you. You're not worthy, or I'm not going to give you any more chances. So a long way to get to my preferred position, number 4. I call it the relentless love view. I think God always invites everyone and every creature conscious or available to live a life of love now and in the afterlife. And God never gives up on anyone at any time. So in the afterlife, God continues to call and to persuade and to say, let's have this love relationship. Now, we can say no to that. Saying no to love is naturally or by nature saying yes to negative things. So I think there are natural negative consequences that come from sin, but that's not the same as God punishing. And God never gives up. And consequently, I have the hope that everyone will eventually say yes, but not the kind of guarantee that can only come if God forces everyone into heaven. Long answer. Sorry.
It's good. It's good. The next question is, what is heaven? But before that, Eric has a very interesting question.
Okay.
Eric says he considers himself an agnostic. Welcome, Eric. Good to have you. Eric says, why does God not continually send messengers or sons, if you like? I would say daughters, maybe even, such as Christ to lead us. Why only that one time hundreds of years ago or 2,000 years ago? What do you make of that?
Yeah, awesome question. This gets kind of down to, again, the question of God's controlling power. Is Jesus of Nazareth an active God that single-handedly implants somebody in the world and like a robot controls to give out some message? Or is Jesus of Nazareth one who responds to God in such a way that's so profound, we call him divine, at least in the sense of showing us what God's love is like? So to that good question, I would say there's potential to have lots of Jesuses or lots of revelatory people. Adam here, I'm sure, is a revelation for some people in his community. I try to be that. Every one of us ought to try to be that. Not that I'm perfect, not that I'm as good as Jesus, or Adam probably wouldn't make the same kind of claim. But I think God is trying to communicate to all creation through all creation, and that includes every single one of us. It's just that Jesus did a better job than I at least have.
Amen to that. So what do you make of heaven?
Well, when I was in my 20s, I thought it was continual orgasm. Now,
are you still with us, folks, or have you dropped off? Okay. He's going to say something really profound right now, so just stick with it, okay?
I don't know if I'm going to get profound. Well, it is hard to imagine, isn't it? Like, what is the greatest degree of well-being we might imagine? I use orgasm because that's an ecstasy kind of moment. And that's part of well-being, but not the only part. So I've got to admit, I don't really know. My guesses are kind of vague. They have to do with talking about peace and love and hope and well-being and flourishing. But nailing down the specifics, that's a lot harder for me. I kind of doubt there's actual streets of gold, but so the specifics I'm not sure about.
It's good. Okay. We're getting all kinds of LOLs in the chat section. So my sermon, if I want to get some laughs, I know what to do now. So that's good, Tom. Thank you.